Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to a brand new explainer where we're unpacking one of the absolutely most chilling cases I've ever come across. This is where true crime literally crashes right into supernatural folklore. We're heading to a seemingly quiet little colony near Narsingpur Road in Madhya Pradesh. Now, every town has its urban legends, right? But what happens when those ghost stories start leaving a documented trail of missing persons? Let's map out exactly how a string of midnight disappearances escalated from a local mystery into a full-blown, terrifying conspiracy. So, to really understand the mechanics of this mystery, we've got to start with the one utterly bizarre pattern tying every single vanishing together. Just imagine you're looking at police files and you suddenly realize that every victim, right before they vanished into thin air, stopped dead in their tracks and looked over their shoulder. Why? What did they hear? This is the central, super unsettling question that brought Raghav, who is this deeply skeptical, highly analytical crime journalist, straight to the local police station. Now, he wasn't there for ghost stories. He was looking for facts, patterns, and motives. But what he actually found was an anomaly that just completely defied all logic. Raghav manages to get access to the most objective piece of evidence they have, a really chilling piece of CCTV footage, time-stamped at exactly 2:17 a.m. Let's walk through how this unfolds. You got a man walking completely alone down an empty street. Out of nowhere, he just abruptly stops. It's like he hears something right behind him. He turns to look back, and you can literally see sheer terror wash over his face. Then, in just a total blur of motion, this small, unseen entity violently leaps right onto his shoulder, and the camera instantly cuts to black. There's no way around it. This wasn't some group hallucination. There was a physical attacker out there, targeting people in the dead of night. Now, while Raghav is trying his best to logically process this impossible footage, the cold, hard facts of the police station get completely shattered by local lore. He's approached by an elderly woman named Shakila Appa, and tragically, her husband was actually the very first victim. She introduces Raghav, and us really, to a terrifying concept that shifts this whole thing from a standard true crime case into something way, way more sinister. She identifies the attacker as Dev Futia. Translated literally, that means the 1.5-footer. According to her, we are not dealing with a human serial killer here. It's an incomplete, half-dead jinn child, born entirely of fire and smoke. It stands a mere 1.5 feet tall, and terrifyingly enough, it doesn't consume human flesh. It consumes human shadows. And this brilliantly illustrates the horrific duality of this entity. Its entire deception preys on human empathy. It mimics the voice of a lost child or even a loved one, calling out words like Baya, which means brother. Because of its tiny stature, it seems completely harmless, right? But the reality underneath is a creature packing 100 times the strength of a normal human. Once it lures you in, you're face to face with pure, pupilless black eyes, a half-burnt face, and backwards-facing feet. It doesn't want your flesh. It literally feeds on your very shadow, slowly hollowing you out from the inside. Before they part ways, Shakila Appa leaves Raghav with one absolutely vital piece of advice, basically a survival mechanic for this nightmare. She tells him, just tell people that if a voice calls from behind, do not turn around. It's a chillingly simple rule. Actually, I want you to imagine that right now. Just imagine hearing someone you love whispering your name right behind your chair as you're listening to this explainer. Your overwhelming, hardwired human instinct is to turn and look, isn't it? Well, in Narsingpur, that simple, natural reflex was an absolute death sentence. Of course, Raghav, being totally driven by his journalistic need for the truth, decides he has to test this himself. So at exactly 2 a.m., he steps out into the empty, silent streets. And then he hears it. A small, innocent little voice calling out, Bhaiya, I want to go home. Against all the warnings he just received, Raghav slowly turns around. And the sensory horror of what he encounters is just visceral. Standing right there is this tiny, distorted figure with an agonizingly twisted body and pitch-black eyes. It smiles at him and then literally launches itself from the ground directly onto Raghav's chest, suffocating him with this immense, freezing pressure. As Raghav is pinned to the pavement, literally feeling the breath leave his lungs, he remembers one crucial detail from Shakila Appa's lore. Jinns have a severe, built-in weakness to iron. In a totally desperate bid for survival, he manages to pull a heavy set of iron keys from his pocket and stabs the entity. And hey, the lore holds up. The creature shrieks and just vanishes right into the darkness. Raghav survives the physical attack, but as he stands up under the flickering streetlights, he realizes something absolutely horrific. Sure, he survived, but the entity succeeded in its primary goal. Raghav looks down, and his shadow is completely gone. Raghav rushes back to Shakila Appa, completely terrified, only for her to reveal an even darker layer to this whole mystery. So the crucial point is, this wasn't some random supernatural chaos. It was a highly calculated, human-driven conspiracy. Get this, a corrupt local builder wanted to get his hands on the prime real estate of the colony. So he actually hired a dark practitioner, a tantric, to summon the Detvatia specifically to terrorize the residents. The resulting panic caused a mass evacuation, which allowed the builder to swoop in and buy out the land for literal pennies. Raghav was targeted specifically so that a journalist would publish the horror and accelerate the panic. Human greed had literally weaponized the supernatural. Unbelievable, right? But surviving that initial attack, that was really just an incubation period. Because the entity ate his shadow, it began using Raghav's body as a vessel. And the mechanics of this possession were just brutal. Raghav started experiencing this severe, relentless burning sensation from the inside out. His limbs began to physically twist against his own will, and his voice dropped into this deep, distorted, torn sound. A really distinct, foul smell of rotting graves just constantly clung to him. And honestly, most terrifyingly of all, he began to completely lose his own reflection. This total loss of self culminated in a terrifying psychological break that we'll call the mirror incident. Raghav, feeling the entity fully taking over, looks into his bathroom mirror and just punches the glass, shattering it everywhere. But the reality of his situation is grim. He doesn't bleed. And looking down at the shattered shards, he doesn't see his own face staring back. He sees the half-burnt, terrifying visage of the dead Fudia. Later on, out on the street, his shadow isn't even attached to his feet anymore. It's standing upright on a nearby wall, looking like a 3-year-old child, raising its hands to mock choke him as Raghav literally struggles for air. The entity is basically in the driver's seat now. Realizing he is rapidly losing the battle for his own body, Raghav remembers one final piece of lore. A djinn is made of fire and smoke, right? So to destroy it, you have to use fire. He manages to track the corrupt builder and the tantric down to an abandoned leather factory on the outsides of town. Inside, these two men are literally celebrating their successful land grab around a sacrificial fire pit. But their little celebration gets cut completely short when a fully possessed Raghav ambushes them. Moving with this unnatural, terrifying speed, he lunges and grabs the tantric right by the throat. At this point, there is an all-out war waging inside Raghav's body. You have the very last shreds of the journalist's consciousness violently fighting against the immense power of the dead Fatikia. Seeing the open vats of acid and that roaring sacrificial fire nearby, Raghav actually manages to seize control for one final heroic moment. He looks down at his own hands, speaks directly to the demon inside him, and delivers these incredibly powerful words. If this body is your home and your hideout, then I will destroy it. You will end with me. He grabs these heavy iron chains, wraps them tightly around his own body to trap the smoke entity inside, and throws himself directly into the burning fire pit. The resulting explosion completely levels the factory. The next morning, the police arrive to find absolutely nothing but ash. There's no trace of Raghav, no trace of the corrupt builder, and no trace of the tantric. And in just a brutally tragic display of bureaucratic irony, the official police report closes the entire case with 3 little words: accidental gas leak. The entire conspiracy is buried right there beneath the rubble, and the ultimate sacrifice made by a skeptical journalist to save his town goes totally unrecorded by the very authorities he initially went to for help. Let's move to and see how this builds into our chilling epilogue. Months pass by. The Narsingpur colony eventually returns to a tense, fragile sort of peace. The whole real estate land grab failed, but the scars are definitely still there. The residents end up hiring a new, completely unsuspecting night watchman to patrol the newly quiet streets. Now, this guy knows absolutely nothing of the builder, nothing of Raghav, and nothing of the local lore. But one cold, dark night, while he's out doing his rounds, the silence is broken. A tiny, innocent little voice calls out from the dark alley right behind him. "Bhaiya, it's very dark here." The watchman stops, turns around, but sees absolutely nothing. However, the local CCTV camera caught exactly what the watchman couldn't see. Right behind him, an invisible 1.5-foot shadow was standing there, just waving at the camera. Raghav destroyed the vessel, sure, but the entity itself is now completely free and it doesn't have a master anymore. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. What would you do if you heard someone call your name from behind right now? Would you look back? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, stay safe out there.